Chapter 24. On Saturday morning, the wash tubs were crowded. The women washed dresses, pink ginghams, and flowered cottons, and they hung them in the sun and stretched the cloth to smooth it. When afternoon came, the whole camp quickened, and the people grew excited. The children caught the fever and were more noisy than usual. About mid-afternoon, child bathing began, and as each child was caught, subdued, and washed, the noise on the playground gradually subsided. Before 5, the children were scrubbed and warned about getting dirty again, and they walked about, stiff in clean clothes, miserable with carefulness. At the big open-air dance platform, a committee was busy. Every bit of electric wire had been requisitioned. The city dump had been visited for wire. Every toolbox had contributed friction tape. And now the patched splice wire was strung out to the dance floor, and the bottlenecks as insulators. This night the floor would be lighted for the first time. By 6 o'clock the men were back from work and looking for work, and a new wave of bathing started. By 7 dinners were over, and men had on their best clothes. Freshly washed overalls, clean blue shirts, sometimes the decent blacks. The girls were ready in their print dresses, stretched and clean, their hair braided and ribboned. The worried woman watched the families and cleaned up the evening dishes. On the platform, the string band practiced, surrounded by a double wall of children. The people in the tent were intent and excited. In the tent of Ezra Huston, chairman, the central committee of 5 men went into the meeting. Huston, a tall, spare man, wind-blackened, with eyes like little blades, spoke to his committee, 1 man from each sanitary unit. "It's so goddamn lucky we got the word they was going to try and bust up the dance," he said. The tubby little representative from Unit 3 spoke up. "I think we ought to squash the hell out of 'em and show 'em." "No," said Huston. "That's what they want. No, sir. If they can get a fight going, then they can run in the cops and say we ain't orderly. They tried it before, other places." He turned to the sad dark boy from Unit 2. "Got the fellas together to go round the fences and see nobody sneaks in?" The sad boy nodded again. "Yeah, 12. Told them not to hit nobody. Just push him out again." Huston said, "Will you go out and find Willie Eaton? He's the chairman of the entertainment, ain't he?" "Yeah. Well, tell him we want to see him." The boy went out, and he returned in a moment with a stringy Texas man. Will Eaton had a long, fragile jaw and dust-colored hair. His arms and legs were long and loose, and he had the gray, sunburned eyes of the panhandle. He stood in the tent, grinning, and his hands pivoted restlessly on his wrists. Huston said, "You heard about tonight?" Willie grinned. "Yeah." "Did anything about it?" "Yeah." "Tell what you done." Willie Eaton grinned happily. "Well, sir, ordinary entertainment committee is 5. I got 20 more, all good, strong boys. They're going to be a dancing and a keeping their eyes open and their ears open. First sign, any talk or argument, they close in tight. Worked her out pretty nice. Can't even see nothing. Kind of move out, and the fella will go out with them. Tell 'em they ain't to hurt fellas." Willie laughed gleefully. "I told him," he said. "Well, tell 'em so they know. They know. Got 5 men out to the gate, looking over the folks that comes in. Try to spot 'em before they get started." Huston stood up. His steel-colored eyes were stern. "Now you look here, Willie. We don't want them fellas hurt. There's going to be deputies out by the front gate. If you blood 'em up, why, them deputies'll get you." "Got that there figured out," said Willie. "Take 'em out the back way, into the field. Some of the boys'll see they get on their way." "Well, it sounds all right," Huston said worriedly. "But don't you let nothing happen, Willie. You're responsible. Don't you hurt them fellas. Don't you use no stick nor no knife or iron or nothing like that." "No, sir," said Willie. We won't mark 'em." Huston was suspicious. "I wished I know I could trust you, Willie. If you got to sock 'em where they won't bleed." "Yes, sir," said Willie. "You sure of the fellas you picked?" "Yes, sir." "All right. And if she gets out of hand, I'll be in the right-hand corner, this way on the dance floor." Willie saluted in mockery and went out. Huston said, "I don't know. I just hope Willie's boys Don't kill nobody. What the hell the deputies want to hurt the camp for? Why can't they just let us be? The sad boy from Unit 2 said, I lived out at Sunland Land in Cattle Company Place. Honest to God, they got a cop for every 10 people. Got one faucet for about 200 people. The tubby man said, Jesus, God, Jeremy, you ain't gotta tell me I was there. They got a block of shacks, 35 of them in a row and 15 deep, and they got 10 crabbers for the whole shebang. In Christ, you could smell 'em a mile. One of them deputies gave me the lowdown. We was sitting around and he says, them goddamn government camps. He says, give people hot water and they're gonna want hot water. Give them flush toilets and they're gonna want them. He says, you give them goddamn Okies stuff like that and they'll want them. And he says, they hold red meetings in them government camps. All figured out how to get on relief. He says, Huston asked, did nobody sock him? No, there was a little fella and he says, what you mean relief? I mean relief, what us taxpayers puts in and you goddamn Okies takes out. We pay sales tax and gas tax and tobacco tax, the little guy says. And he says, farmers get 4 cents a cotton pound from the government. Ain't that relief? And he says, railroads get and shipping companies draw subsidies. Ain't that relief? They're doing stuff to get that got to be done, the deputy says. Well, the little guy says, how'd you goddamn crops get picked if it wasn't for us? The tubby man looked around. What'd the deputy say? Huston asked. Well, the deputy got mad, and he says, you goddamn Reds is all the time stirring up trouble. He says, you better come along with me. So he takes this little guy in, and he says, and they give him 60 days in jail for vagrancy. How'd they do that if he had a job? Asked Timothy Wallace. The tubby man laughed. You know better than that. He said, you know a vagrant is anybody a cop don't like. And that's why they hate this here camp. No cops can get in. This here is the United States, not California. Huston sighed. Wished we could stay here. Got to be going for long. I like this here. Folks get along nice, and God Almighty, why can't they let us do it instead of keeping us miserable and putting us in jail? I swear to God, they're gonna push us into fighting if they don't quit worrying us. Then he calmed his voice. We just got to keep peaceful, he reminded himself. The committee got no right to fly off in the handle. The tubby man from Unit 3 said, anybody that thinks this committee got all cheese and crackers ought to just try her. There was a fight in my unit today. Woman got to calling names and then got to throwing garbage. The ladies committee couldn't handle it, and they come to me. Want me to bring the fight in this here committee. I told them they got to handle women their trouble themselves. This here committee ain't gonna mess with no garbage fights. Huston nodded. You done good, he said. And now the dusk was falling, and as the darkness deepened, the practicing of the string band seemed to grow louder. The lights flashed on, and 2 men inspected the patched wire to the dance floor. The children crowded thickly about the musician. A boy with a guitar sang the down-home blues, chording delicately for himself, and his second chorus, and on his second chorus, 3 harmonicas and a fiddle joined him. From the tents, the people streamed toward the platform, men in their clean blue denim and women in their ginghams. They came near to the platform and then stood quietly waiting, in their faces bright and intent under the light. Around the reservation there was a high wire fence, and along the fence, at intervals of 50 feet, the guards sat in the grass and waited. Now the cars of the guests began to arrive, small farmers and their families, migrants from other camps. And as each guest came through the gate, he mentioned the name of the camper who had invited him. The string band took a real tune up and played loudly, for they were not practicing anymore. In front of their tents, the Jesus lovers sat and watched, and their faces hard and contemptuous. They did not speak to one another, they watched for sin, and their faces condemned the whole proceeding. At the Joe tent, Ruthie and Winfield had bolted what little dinner they had, and then they started for the platform. Ma called them back and held up their faces with a hand under each chin, and looked into their nostrils, pulled their ear and looked inside, and sent them to the sanitary unit to wash their hands once more. They dodged around the back of the building and bolted for the platform to stand among the children, close packed about the band. Al finished his dinner and spent half an hour shaving with Tom's razor. Al had a tight-fitting wool suit and a striped shirt, and he bathed and washed and combed his straight hair back. And when the washroom was vacant for a moment, he smiled engagingly at himself in the mirror, and he turned and tried to see himself in profile when he smiled. He slipped his purple armbands on and put on his tight coat. And he rubbed up his yellow shoes with a piece of toilet paper. A late bather came in, and Al hurried out and walked recklessly toward the platform, his eye peeled for girls. Nearer the dance floor, he saw a pretty blonde girl sitting in front of a tent. He sidled near and threw his coat to show his shirt. "Gonna dance tonight?" he asked. The girl looked away and did not answer. "Can't a fella pass a word with you? How about you and me dancing?" And he said nonchalantly, "I can waltz." The girl raised her eyes shyly, and she said, "That ain't nothing. Anybody can waltz." "Not like me," said Al. The music surged, and he tapped one foot in time. "Come on," he said. A very fat woman poked her head out of the tent and scowled at him. "You get along," she said fiercely. "This here girl's spoke for. She's gonna be married, and her man's a-comin' for her." Al winked rakishly at the girl, and he tripped on, striking his feet into the music and swaying his shoulders and swinging his arms. And the girl looked after him intently. Pa put down his plate and stood up. "Come on, John," he said, and he explained to the ma, "We're going to talk to some fellows about getting work." And Pa and Uncle John walked toward the manager's house. Tom worked a piece of store bread into the stew gravy on his plate and ate the bread. He handed his plate to Ma, and she put it in the bucket of hot water and washed it, and handed it to Rose Sharon to wipe. "Ain't you gonna go into the dance?" Ma asked. "Sure," said Tom. "I'm on a committee. We're gonna entertain some fellas." "Already on a committee?" Ma said. "I guess 'cause you got work." Rose Sharon put the dish away. Tom pointed at her. "My God, she's a-getting big," he said. Rose Sharon blushed and took another dish from Ma. "She sure is," Ma said. "And she's getting prettier," said Tom. The girl blushed more deeply and hung her head. "You stop it," she said softly. "Of course she is," said Ma. "Girl with a baby always gets pretty." Tom laughed. "If she keeps a song like this, she's gonna need a wheelbarrow to carry it." "Now you stop," Rose Sharon said, and she went inside the tent, out of sight. Ma chuckled. "You sure not to worry her." "She likes it," said Tom. "I know she likes it, but it worries her too, and she's been mourning for Connie." "Well, she might as well give him up now. He's probably studying to be President of the United States by now." "Don't worry her," Ma said. "She ain't got no easy road to hoe." Will Eaton moved near, and he grinned and said, "You're Tom Joad?" "Yeah." "Well, I'm the chairman of the entertainment committee. We're gonna need you. Fellow told me about you." Sure, I'll play with you," said Tom. "This here's Ma." "Howdy," said Willie. "Glad to meet you," Willie said. "Gonna put you on the gate to start, and then on the floor. Want you to look over the guys when they come in and try to spot 'em. You'll be with another fella. Then later I want you to dance and watch." "Yeah, I can do all right," said Tom. Ma said apprehensively, "They ain't no trouble?" "No, ma'am," Willie said. "They ain't gonna be no trouble." "None at all," said Tom. "Well, I'll come along. See you at the dance, Ma." The two young men walked quickly away toward the main gate. Ma piled the washed dishes on a box. "Come on out," she called, and when there was no answer, "Rose Sharon, you come out." The girl stepped from the tent, and she went on with the dish wiping. "Tom was only jawing you." "I know. I didn't mind. Only I hate to have folks look at me." "Ain't no way to help that. Folks gonna look. But it makes folks happy to see a girl in the family way. Makes folks sort of giggly and happy. Ain't you going to the dance?" "I was, but I don't know. I wish Connie was here." Her voice rose. "Ma, I wished he was here. I can't hardly stand it." Ma looked closely at her. "I know," she said, "but Rose Sharon, don't shame your folks." "I don't aim to, Ma." "Well, don't you shame us. We got too much on us now, without no shame." The girl's lips quivered. "I ain't going to the dance. I couldn't. Ma, help me." She sat down and buried her head in her hands. Ma wiped her hands on the dish towel and she squatted down in front of her daughter, and she put her two good hands on Rose Sharon's hair. "You're a good girl," she said. You always was a good girl. I'll take care of you. Don't you fret." She put an interest in her tone. "Know what you and me's gonna do? We're going to that dance, and we're gonna sit there and watch. If anybody says to come dance, why, I'll say you ain't strong enough. I'll say you're poorly, and you can hear the music and all like that." Rose Sharon raised her head. "You won't let me dance?" "No, I won't. And don't let nobody touch me?" "No, I won't." The girl sighed. She said desperately, "I don't know what I'm gonna do, Ma. I just don't know. I don't know." Ma patted her knee. "Look," she said, look here at me. I'm gonna tell you. In a little while, it ain't gonna be so bad. In a little while, and that's true. Now come on. We'll go get washed up, and we'll put on our nice dress, and we'll sit by the dance." She led Rose Sharon toward the sanitary unit. Pa and Uncle John squatted with a group of men by the porch of the office. "We nearly got work today," Pa said. "It was just a few minutes late. They already got two fellas. And well, sir, it was a funny thing. There's a straw boss in there, and he says we just got some 2-bit men. Of course, we can use 20-cent men. We can use a lot of 20-cent men. You go to your camp and say we'll put a lot of fellows on for 20 cents. The squatting men moved nervously. A broad-shouldered man, his face completely in the shadow of the black hat, spat his knee with his palm. "I knowed it. God damn it," he cried, "and they'll get men. They'll get hungry men. You can't feed your family on 20 cents an hour, but you'll take anything. They got you going and coming. They just auction a job off. Jesus Christ, pretty soon they're gonna make us pay to work." "We would have took her," Pa said, "but we ain't had no job." "We sure would have took her, but there was them guys in there, and the way they look, we was scared to take her." Black Hat said, Get crazy thinking. I've been working for a fella, and he can't pick his crop. It costs more just to pick her than he can get for her, and he don't know what to do." Seems to me Pa stopped. The circle was silent for him. "Well, I just thought, if a fella had an acre, well, my woman, she could raise a little truck and a couple of pigs and some chickens, and us men could go out and find work, and then go back. Kids could maybe go to school. Never seen such schools as out here. Our kids ain't happy in them schools," Black Hat said. "Why not? They're pretty nice, them schools. Well, a raggedy kid with no shoes, and them other kids with socks on, and them nice pants, and them yelling, 'Okie!' My boy went to school. Had a fight every day. Then good, too. Tough little bastard. Every day he got to fight. Come home with his clothes tore and his nose bloody, and Ma'd whale him. Made her stop that. No need everybody beating the hell out of him. Poor little fella. Jesus. He gives some of them kids a going over, though. Them nice pants, son of a bitch. I don't know. Pa demanded. "Well, what the hell am I gonna do? We're out of money. One of my boys got a short job, but that won't feed us. I'm gonna go and take 20 cents. I got to." Black Hat raised his head, and his bristled chin showed in the light, and his stringy neck, where the whiskers lay flat like fur. "Yeah," he said bitterly, "you'll do that, and I'm a 2-bit man. You'll take my job for 20 cents, and then I'll get hungry, and I'll take my job back for 15. Yeah, you go right and do her." What the hell can I do?" Pa demanded. "I can't starve, so you get 2 bits." Black Hat dipped his head again, and his chin went into the shadow. "I don't know," he said. "I just don't know. It's bad enough to work 12 hours a day and come out just a little bit hungry, but we gotta figure it out all the time, too. My kid ain't getting enough to eat. I can't think all the time. God damn it. It drives a man crazy." The circle of men shifted their feet nervously. Tom stood at the gate and watched the people coming in to the dance. A floodlight shone down into their faces. Will Eaton said, "Just keep your eyes open. I'm sending Jewel Vatilla over. He's half Cherokee. Nice fella. Keep your eyes open, and see if you can pick out the ones." "Okay," said Tom. He watched the farm families come in. the girls with braided hair and the boys polished for the dance. Jewel came in and stood beside him. "I'm with you," he said. Tom looked at the hawk nose and the high brown cheekbones and the slender receding chin. "They says you're half Injun. You look all Injun to me." "No," said Jewel, "just half. Wished I was full blood. I'd had my own land on the reservation. Them full bloods got it pretty nice, some of 'em." "Look at them people," Tom said. "The guests were moving in the great way. Families from farms, migrants from the ditch camps, children straining to be free, and quiet parents holding them back." Jewel said, "These here dances done funny things. Our people got nothing, but just because they can ask their friends to come here to the dance, sets them up and makes them proud, and the folks respects them on the count of these here dances. Fella got a little place where I was working. He come to a dance here. I asked him myself, and he come. Says we got the only decent dance in the county, where a man can take his girls and his wife. Hey, look!" 3 young men were coming through the gate, young men working in jeans. They walked close together. The guards at the gate questioned them, and they answered as they passed through. "Look at them careful." He moved to the guard. "Who asked them 3? "Fella named Jackson, Unit 4. Jewel came back to Tom. "I think them's our fellas." "How you know?" "I don't know. Just got a feeling." They're kind of scared. Follow him and tell Willie to look him over, and tell Willie to check with Jackson, Unit 4. Get him to see if they're all right. I'll stay here." Tom strolled after the 3 young men. They moved toward the dance floor and took their positions quietly on the edge of the crowd. Tom saw Willie near the band and signaled him. "What you want?" Willie said. "Them 3, see there? Yeah, they say a fella's named Jackson, Unit 4. Ask them." Willie craned his neck and he saw Huston and called him over. "Them 3 fellas," he said. "We better get Jackson, Unit 4, and see if he asked them." Huston turned on his heel and walked away, and in a few moments he was back with the lean boy, Boney Kansan. "This here's Jackson," Huston said. "Look, Jackson, see them 3 young fellas? Yeah? Well, did you ask them?" "No." "Ever seen 'em before?" Jackson peered at them. "Sure, worked at Gregorio's with them." "So they know your name?" "Sure, I worked right beside 'em." "All right," Huston said. "Don't you go near 'em. We ain't gonna throw 'em out if they're nice. Thanks, Mr. Jackson." "Good work," he said to Tom. "I guess them's the fellas." Jewel picked 'em out. "Hell, no wonder," said Willie. "His Indian blood smelled them. Well, I'll point 'em out to the boys." A 16-year-old boy came running through the crowd. He stopped, panting, in front of Huston. "Mr. Huston," he said, "I been like you said. There's a car with 6 men parked up down by the eucalyptus trees, and there's one with 4 men up that northern side. I asked them for a match. They got guns. I seen 'em." Huston's eyes grew hard and cruel. "Willie," he said, "you sure you got everything ready?" Willie grinned happily. "Sure I have, Mr. Huston. Ain't gonna be no trouble." "Well, don't hurt him. 'Member now, if you can, be quiet and nice. I kinda like to see him. Be in my tent." "I'll see what we can do," said Willie. Dancing had not formally started, but now Willie climbed onto the platform. "Choose your squares," he called. The music stopped. Boys and girls, young men and women, ran about until 8 squares were ready on the big floor, ready and waiting. The girls held their hands in front of them and squirmed their fingers. The boys tapped their feet restlessly. Around the floor, the old folks sat, smiling slightly, holding their children back from the floor. And in the distance, the Jesus lovers sat, with hard, condemning faces, and watched the sin. Ma and Rosa Sharon sat on a bench and watched. As each boy asked Rosa Sharon's partner, Ma said, "No, she ain't well," and Rosa Sharon blushed, and her eyes were bright. The caller stepped to the middle of the floor and held up his hands. "All ready? Then let her go." The music snarled out, chicken reel, shrill and clear, fiddle skirling, harmonicas nasal and sharp, and the guitars booming on the bass strings. The caller named the turns. The squares moved, and they danced forward and back, hands round, swinging your lady. The caller, in a frenzy, tapped his feet, strutted back and forth, and went through the figures as he called them. "Swing your ladies and dole-se-do. Join hands and round away we go." The music rose and fell, and the moving shoes beating in time on the platform sounded like drums. Swing to the right, swing to the left, break now, break, back to, back. The caller sang the high, vibrant monotone. Now, the girls' hairs lost the careful combing. Now, perspiration stood out on the foreheads of the boys. Now, the experts showed the tricky intersteps. And the old people on the edge of the floor took up the rhythm, patted their hands softly, and tapped their feet. And they smiled gently, and then caught one another's eyes and nodded. Ma leaned her head close to Rose Sharon's ear. Maybe you wouldn't think it, but your pa was the nicest dancer as I ever seen when he was young. And Ma smiled. Makes me think of the old times, she said. And on the faces of the watchers, the smiles were of old times. Up near Muskogee 20 years ago, there was a blind man with a fiddle. I see a fellow once could just slap his heels 4 times in one jump. Swedes up in Dakota know what they do? Put pepper on the floor. Gets up the ladies' skirts and makes them pretty lively. Lively as a filly in season. Swedes do that sometimes. In the distance, the Jesus lovers watched their restive children. Look on sin, they said. Them folks is riding to hell on a poker. With a shame the godly got to see it. And their children were silent and nervous. One more round, and then a little rest. The caller chanted. Hit her hard, 'cause we're gonna stop soon. And the girls were damp and flush, and they danced with open mouths and serious, reverent faces. The boys flung back their long hair and pranced, pointed their toes, and clicked their heels. In and out the squares moved, crossing, backing, whirling, and the music shrilled. Then, suddenly, it stopped. The dancers stood still, panting with fatigue, and the children broke from restraint, dashed on the floor, chased one another madly, ran, slid, stole caps, and pulled hair. The dancers sat down, fanning themselves with their hands. The members of the band got up and stretched themselves and sat down again, and the guitar players worked softly over their strings. Now, Willie called, choose again for another square, if you can. The dancers scrambled to their feet, and the new dancers plunged forward for their partners. Tom stood near the 3 young men. He saw them force their way through, out on the floor, toward one of the forming squares. He waved his hand at Willie, and Willie spoke to the fiddler. The fiddler squawked his bow across the strings. 20 young men lounged slowly across the floor. The 3 reached the square, and one of them said, I'll dance with this here. A blond boy looked up in astonishment. She's my partner. Listen, you son of a bitch. Off in the darkness a shrill whistle sounded. The 3 were walled now, and each one felt the grip of hands. And then the wall of men slowly moved off the platform. Willie yelled, let's go. The music shrilled out, the caller intoned the figures, and the feet thudded on the platform. A touring car drove to the entrance. The driver called, open up, we hear you got a ride. The guard kept his position. We got no ride. Listen to that music. Who are you? Deputy Sheriff. Got a warrant? We don't need a warrant if there's a ride. Well, we got no rides here, said the gate guard. The men in the car listened to the music and the sound of the caller, and then the car pulled away and parked in a crossroad and waited. In the moving squad, each of the 3 young men was pinioned, and a hand was over each mouth. When they reached the darkness, the group opened up. Tom said, that sure did nice. He held both arms of his victim from behind. Willie ran over to them from the dance floor. Nice work, he said. Only need 6 now. Huston wants to see these here fellers. Huston himself emerged from the darkness. These the ones? Sure, said Jewel. Went right up and started it, but they didn't even swing once. Let's look at 'em. The prisoners were swung around to face them. Their heads were down. Huston put a flashlight beam in each sullen eye. What did you want to do it for? He asked. There was no answer. Who the hell told you to do it? God darn it, we didn't do nothing. We was just gonna dance. No, you wasn't, Jewel said. You was gonna sock that kid. Tom said, Mr. Huston, just when these here fellows moved in, somebody give a whistle. Yeah, I know. The cops come right to the gate. He turned back. We ain't gonna hurt you. Now who told you to come and bust up our dance? He waited for a reply. You're one of our own folks, Huston said sadly. You belong with us. How did you happen to come? We know all about it, he added. Well, goddamn it, a fella got to eat. Well, who sent you? Who paid you to come? We ain't been paid. And you ain't gonna be. No fight, no pay. Ain't that right? One of the Pinion men said, do what you want. We ain't gonna tell nothing. Huston's head sank down for a moment, and then he said softly, okay, don't tell. But look here, don't knife your own folks. We're trying to get along, having fun, and keeping order. Don't tear all that down. Just think about it. You're just harming yourself. All right, boys, put 'em over the back fence, and don't hurt 'em. They don't know what they're doing. The squad moved slowly toward the rear camp, and Huston looked after them. Joel said, let's just take one good kick at 'em. No, you don't, Willie cried. I said we wouldn't. Just one nice little kick, Joel pleaded. Just loft 'em over the fence. No, sir, Willie insisted. Listen, you, he said. We're letting you off this time, but you take back your word, and if and ever this here happens again, we'll just naturally kick the hell out of whoever comes. We'll bust every bone in their body. Now you tell your boys that. Huston says you're our kind of folks. Maybe. I'd hate to think of it. They neared the fence. Two of the seated guards stood up and moved over. Got some fellas going home early, said Willie. The three men climbed over the fence and disappeared into the darkness. And the squad moved quickly back to the dance floor, and the music of old Dan Tucker skirled and whined from the string band. Over near the office the men still squatted and talked, and the shrill music came to them. Pa said, They's change a-comin'. I don't know what. Maybe we won't live to see her, but she's a-comin'. They's a restless feelin'. Fella can't figure nothin' out, he's so nervous. And Black Hat lifted his head up again, and the light fell on his bristly whiskers. He gathered some little rocks from the ground and shot them like marbles with his thumb. I don't know. She's a-comin' all right, like you say. Fella told me what happened at Akron, Ohio. Rubber companies. They got mountain people in because they'd work cheap, and these here mountain people up and joined the union. Well, sir, hell just popped. All them storekeepers and legionnaires and people like that, they get drillin' and yellin', Red! And they gonna run the union right out of Akron. Preachers get a preachin' about, and papers a yellin', and they's pick handles put out by the rubber companies, and they're buying gas. Jesus, you'd think them mountain boys was regular devils. He stopped and found some more rocks to shoot. Well, sir, it was last March, and one Sunday, 5,000 of them mountain men had a turkey shoot outside of town. 5,000 of them just marched through the town with their rifles, and they had their turkey shoot, and then they marched back, and that's all they done. Well, sir, they ain't been no trouble since then. These here citizen communities give back to the pick handles, and the storekeepers keep their stores, and nobody been clubbed nor tarred and feathered, and nobody been killed. There was a long silence, and then Black Hat said, They're getting pretty mean out here. Burn that camp and beat up folks. I've been thinking. All our folks got guns. I've been thinking maybe we ought to get up a turkey shooting club and have meetings every Sunday. The men looked up at him and then down at the ground, and their feet moved restlessly, and they shifted their weight from one leg to the other.